The chair now recognizes Ms. Friedman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for coming here and joining us today. The projects and studies authorized by WRDA help with waterways, navigable channels, water quality, et cetera. And in my district, probably the most important one of these is the LA River. We have been working for years to upgrade that infrastructure to prevent flooding, which people don't remember was a huge problem in Los Angeles and sometimes still is, and we have a huge rain event coming just this week. We are also making that river accessible to the public and building parks and bikeways along it. In fact, just a couple months ago, I brought Ranking Member Larson, and he was really shocked to see the number of people that were using that recreation in a dense park-poor area on a weekday afternoon. So I look forward to continuing to see that resource revitalized for my community. And I want to come back to that, but first I want to turn to a key priority for the ports of Los Angeles. Having funded the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund with revenues from the Harbor Maintenance Tax, which is the HMT. In fact, donor ports like Long Beach account for 50% of all HMT revenue, yet historically they've received less than 2% of HMT revenue in return. So they're donor ports and they're not getting that revenue back. So in 2020, Congress enacted Section 102 of WRDA 2020, which provided 12% of annual HMTF revenue for expanded uses at donor and energy ports. Mr. Hasabagaba, even though this funding was authorized in 2020, as you know, it took 4 years for the Port of Long Beach to receive a payment of $49 million. Can you elaborate on how the port is using that funding? And also whether, what you will be using that kind of funding for in the future, briefly, if you can do it.
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. It's important to distinguish between the donor and energy port funding allocated through WRDA 2014, which is continuing to be allocated, and the additional funding through that, what you referenced, Section 102 for in-water expanded uses, that was authorized in WRDA 2020. So what that means for us, the nation's second busiest port, a massive economic engine that generates nearly 3 million jobs and moves cargo through every congressional district, what that meant for us is, in contrast, Section 102 funding, which was not included in the FY25 core work plan, is about $380 million nationwide. For Long Beach, that is a difference of $5.7 million without Section 102 versus $49 million that we received the year prior. So you're talking about nearly a 90% drop in funding that is critical to keep this project that is important for the national security and the national transportation system to be delivered.
Sure, and we all saw during COVID that the ports are so essential in terms of supply chain. We saw boats not being able to get in and out and what that meant for consumers, what that meant for prices. So I look forward to engaging with my colleagues to make sure that the funds are allocated as congressionally directed. I want to go back now to the LA River, and I'm going to direct my questions to Ms. Uffner. I wanted to talk about and that was brought up before, the deeply concerning directive that was issued on October 15th by the Department of Defense. They like to call it the Department of War because I guess they don't believe in defense or peace. But this directive requires the Corps districts to obtain approval from the Office of the Assistant Secretary of War of Legislative Affairs before engagement with federal or state elected officials or their staff. Now, we have ongoing communication with the Corps all the time about issues on the LA River for approval of new bridges that have been funded, for flood improvements so that we keep our communities safe. We have had several conversations with the Corps' LA district over the course of this year to get critical updates on ongoing projects like the restoration project, but now they can't talk to us. They literally, under this directive, can't talk to a member of Congress before getting sign-off from the Secretary of War, which makes no sense to me at all. I want to know from you how you think that this new bureaucracy and bloat is going to impact costs, how it's going to impact the ability to protect people from flooding, to get these funded projects done at a time when tariffs are already driving the cost up increasingly every single week. What kind of effect is this going to have?
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. This could potentially have an impact definitely on the WRDA process, let alone with everyday conversations with the Corps. The challenge is, if you have all three partners work together on WRDA, making sure communities are safe with water, The communication is key at the end of the day because you have to communicate what is working, what is not working. The Corps has to have the ability to go to Congress and say, hey, here are some of the water problems here are some of the water problems within the communities, and here are some of the non-federal sponsors that have come to me. The non-federal sponsors need to go to the Corps and say, hey, I'm having this problem. Could you help us design something where I can take to Congress? And if that leg is taken out of the equation, it may impact the future word cycle.
Thank you. Well, I'm extremely concerned about the impact of this on life and safety, so I want to thank you so much for being here, and I yield back.